The strongest man who ever lived, the hero who defeated every monster in existence, stands in his own home, covered in blood. Around him lie the bodies of his 3 children, shot through with arrows, their small bodies lifeless. His wife, the woman he loved more than life itself, dead by his own hands. And the most terrifying part? Hercules has absolutely no idea how they died. In the next few minutes, you're going to witness the most horrifying moment in Greek mythology, the night the greatest hero became the worst monster. This isn't the Disney version. This is the truth they didn't want you to know. This is the story that ancient Greece tried to bury. The darkest chapter in the legend of Hercules, the moment when the mightiest warrior who ever lived became the monster he was sworn to destroy. What you're about to discover will shatter everything you thought you knew about heroes. Because the truth is, Hercules' legendary 12 labors weren't acts of heroism. The hero at his peak, Hercules had everything. The son of Zeus himself, he possessed strength that could move mountains and courage that defeated every monster the ancient world could throw at him. He had conquered the Nemean lion, strangled serpents as an infant, and earned glory across every land. But more than fame and power, Hercules had something that truly mattered: a family. His wife Megara, the princess of Thebes, had given him 3 sons. Some accounts say 6, others say 8, but the number doesn't matter. What matters is that Hercules loved them with every fiber of his being. After years of battle and bloodshed, he had finally found peace within the walls of his home. He was no longer just a warrior. He was a father, a husband, a man who had earned his happy ending. But on Mount Olympus, someone was watching, and she was seething with rage. Hera, queen of the gods, had never forgiven Hercules for simply existing. He was living proof of Zeus's infidelity, a constant reminder that her husband had betrayed her with a mortal woman named Alcmene. For years, Hera had tormented Hercules, sending serpents to kill him as a baby, orchestrating plots to destroy him at every turn. But he survived everything she threw at him. Now, seeing him happy, seeing him content with his mortal family, Hera realized something horrifying. Hercules had found peace. He had escaped her wrath by simply choosing to love, and that she could not allow. Hera descended from Olympus with a plan so cruel, so devastatingly perfect, that it would become the blueprint for tragedy itself. She wouldn't kill Hercules. That would be mercy. Instead, she would make him destroy everything he loved with his own hands. She would turn the hero into a monster, and he would have to live with what he'd done for the rest of his immortal life. It started on an ordinary evening. Hercules had returned from a hunt, the kind of peaceful activity that filled his days now. His children ran to greet him, their voices echoing through the courtyard with laughter and joy. Megara smiled at him from the doorway, the sun setting behind her, painting everything in warm golden light. This was the moment Hera chose. She unleashed her divine madness upon him, a supernatural rage that ancient Greeks called Lyssa. It wasn't anger. It wasn't loss of control. It was something far worse. It was madness that twisted reality itself, that turned loved ones into enemies, that made the mind see monsters where there were only children. Hercules' vision blurred. The warm light of home transformed into the darkness of a battlefield. His children's laughter became the war cries of enemies. Megara's face morphed into that of a hostile invader. And Hercules, the greatest warrior who ever lived, did what warriors do. He attacked. With his bare hands, with the same hands that had cradled his newborn sons, Hercules began to kill. he grabbed his bow and arrows, the same weapons that had slain the Stymphalian birds, and turned them on his own family. The accounts vary in their details, but they all agree on the horror. Hercules methodically hunted down and murdered each of his children. Some versions say he threw them into fire, believing them to be the sons of his enemy. Others say he shot them with arrows, thinking they were wild beasts. Megara tried to stop him. She screamed, she pleaded, she tried to make him see reason. But in his madness, Hercules saw only another enemy, and he killed her too. The massacre was complete. The house that had once echoed with children's laughter now stood silent, filled only with death. And then, like a curtain being lifted, the madness cleared. Imagine that moment. The fog in Hercules' mind dissipated, and reality came crashing back. He stood in his home, weapons in hand, surrounded by bodies. His children, his wife, all dead, all killed by him. The greatest hero in Greek mythology fell to his knees and wept. The man who had never been defeated in battle, who had faced down gods and monsters without fear, was broken by what he'd done. Some accounts say he tried to kill himself immediately, that he grabbed his sword and prepared to end his own life, unable to bear the weight of his actions. But even in his darkest moment, he was stopped. His nephew Iolaus found him and prevented the suicide. Then came Theseus, his closest friend, who stood by him despite the horror of what had happened. They convinced Hercules that death would be too easy, an escape he didn't deserve. Word spread quickly. The same people who had celebrated Hercules as their champion now recoiled in terror. The hero had become a monster. The protector had become the destroyer. Ancient Greek society had strict laws about blood guilt, about the pollution that came from killing family members. Hercules was ritually unclean, cursed, an abomination that could contaminate entire cities just by his presence. He fled to Delphi, to the oracle of Apollo, seeking some way to atone for what he'd done. And the oracle gave him an answer that would define the rest of his legend. He was to serve his cousin, King Eurystheus of Tiryns, for 12 years. Whatever tasks the king demanded, Hercules would perform. There would be no refusal, no negotiation. This was his penance. Eurystheus, a coward who had always envied Hercules' strength, saw his opportunity. He devised 12 labors, tasks so impossible that they were designed to kill Hercules. Slay the invincible Nemean lion, destroy the immortal Hydra, capture the Erymanthian boar, clean the Augean stables in a single day. Each task was meant to be a death sentence. But here's what makes this story so the deeper truth. But let's pause here and understand what this myth really means. The ancient Greeks didn't tell stories just for entertainment. They told them to explain the darkness inside human nature. Hercules' madness wasn't just about Hera's cruelty. It was about something much more universal and terrifying. It's about the thin line between hero and monster. It's about how the same strength that protects can also destroy. It's about how trauma and rage, even divine rage, can turn a good person into something unrecognizable. The Greeks understood that warriors who spend their lives in violence can't simply turn it off when they come home. They knew that the skills that make someone a hero on the battlefield can make them dangerous in times of peace. Hercules spent his entire life as a weapon. From infancy, when he strangled those serpents, he was trained to solve problems with strength and violence. The aftermath. After completing the 12 labors, Hercules wasn't magically forgiven. The gods accepted his penance, but he carried the weight of his crimes forever. Ancient sources tell us that he could never speak of what happened without weeping. The memory of that night haunted him through every subsequent adventure, every new marriage, every attempt to rebuild his life. Even his death, years later, was marked by this tragedy. When Hercules finally died, poisoned by his second wife Deianira in a tragic misunderstanding, some scholars argue he welcomed it. Death was the only release from the guilt that had consumed him since that terrible night. But the Greeks did something remarkable with this story. They didn't erase it from Hercules' legend. They didn't pretend it never happened or claim it was all Hera's fault and therefore didn't count. No, they made it central to who Hercules was, the hero who murdered his family and spent the rest of his life trying. So when you see Hercules portrayed in movies and television as a simple, noble hero who's always good and always strong, remember the truth. Remember the night he became a murderer. Remember that his legendary 12 labors weren't achievements he was proud of. They were his punishment, his desperate attempt to balance the scales for an unforgivable crime. The real Hercules wasn't the hero despite his darkness. He was the hero because of it, because he faced what he'd done, accepted his guilt, and spent the rest of his immortal life trying to make amends for the unamendable. That's the Hercules the ancient Greeks worshipped. Not a perfect hero, but a broken man who refused to let his brokenness define him. And that might be the most heroic thing of all. So what do you think? Was Hercules truly a hero or just a broken man trying to escape his guilt? Could anyone really come back from something this horrific? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to know if you think redemption is even possible after murdering your own family. And if this story shocked you as much as it shocked me when I first discovered it, smash that like button and subscribe, because we're diving deeper into the myths that history tried to bury. The truth is always darker than the legends.